Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groom. I'm Hovik Manucharyan here with Asbed Bedrossian. This is a continuation of our discussion with Mr. Vardan Aramyan on economic issues facing Armenia in 2022. This two-part episode was recorded on Friday, August 25, 2022. In this episode, Part 2 will focus on bank secrecy laws and Armenia's continuing initiative to reduce cash transactions in its economy. Please find the previous episode titled Part 1 with Mr. Vardan Aramyan, as it may contain some important or interesting context for you. And our guest is Mr. Vardan Aramyan, who is a former Minister of Finance of the Republic of Armenia, serving from 2016 to 2018. He is currently the Senior VP of Finance and Economy at Vallex Group in Yerevan. Before we begin the show, however, we'd like to request that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. We are also very active on Facebook, both as a group and a page. All the Groom links are in our Linktree page. Click on it and find us everywhere. If you're listening to this through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, we would appreciate if you could rate this show to help us reach a wider audience. All right, on with the show. All right. For the next question, I would like to talk a little bit about some upcoming potential changes to the bank secrecy laws in Armenia.
Since the start of the Pashinyan administration, there have been various changes that reduced bank secrecy already. And recently, the Armenian Public Revenue Committee has submitted a proposal to change banking secrecy laws to allow the agency to inquire on secrets of citizens without their permission and without an order from the court. Previously or currently, there is a requirement for an order from the court in order for the revenue bodies or anyone to sort of inquire on the what's in your bank account or anything related to bank secrets. Mr. Aramyan, in general, what's your opinion on this, and what is the motivation behind this law?
Okay, first of all, we need to say that such kind of approach and the experience existing all around the world. This is my first message. In reality, in EU, in the US, usually tax authority, they have a direct the opportunity to directly to go and see what's going on. However, what is the danger here? In Europe or in developed world, there are the developed institutions which act as a resistance for a tax authority not to subjectively impose or behave or use their mandates. This is very dangerous. If you do not have such kind of resistance or how to say the structural mechanisms balancing the power of tax authority. If tax authority, my judgment is coming that what is going all around the world, that, for instance, Pashinyan administration can can decide to put without the politics, but in any case to put this or that person into the jail, and no matter whether it is objective or subjective, this person must put on the jail. It already signals that such kind of authority or such kind of rights can be subjectively utilized by the tax authority. What it will signal to the society and business? Society and business can fear that tomorrow, if that happens, because they have already experienced, they have bad memories. And bad memories happen not long ago, just recently. A lot of cases you can find in media. How come that they can intervene here or that, or these businessmen, they don't like this business, and then they attack these businessmen without. In the end of the day, money is very sensitive and very flexible. Immediately, they can be outflow from Armenia. Deposit can go, for instance, let's bring an example on me personally. I have a different performance in the worldwide, right? And I'm doing a trading in global platforms, investing in these. And then when I just want to fix my income, I'd send my money from my portfolio to my bank account. Now, if tax person or a tax inspector will look to my accounts, okay, there is a transfer from Binance to my account. And without any justification, without anything, they can call me because they don't like Vardan Aramyan, who is making a public speeches. With another tool on the hand of the tax authority and the current government to open up a criminal case, no matter that everything is very transparent. So it's up to our Vardan Aramyan to go and to explain from where this, so they will open just a criminal case, and there's a benchmark, and there's some kind of limitation. And knowing about this, what I am going to do, I will take this account, I will open up an account in the Bank of Georgia, which I'm going to do, by the way, and then just all my international trades. By the way, it is not taxable income due to our local tax. But so what? Tax authority can call me and ask me explanations. Because why I am thinking so? Because there's no mechanism that can confront or can withstand or can balance the power of tax authority. Plus, I had a bad memory. I was looking. I am familiar with what is going on in our reality.
One thing that is interesting. You mentioned foreign countries, and the proposal itself cites France and Germany. It says where taxation bodies have access to data of citizens and legal entities. What do you think about such comparisons?
It's nonsense, Hovik, because you know what does it mean? You are bringing a champion who can lift 100 kilos, and he is a professional weightlifter, and you are bringing a small kid and say, you know, this guy can lift 100 kilos, let's try this small kid. We do not have enough developed institutions in even our court system.
I was just going to say the independent judiciary.
Everything, independent judiciary, everything. You know, you do not have such kind of institutions that can safeguard me. They can give me a guarantee that I am well protected. I do not have any problem. I am a Vardan Aramyan. I am publicly declared. I am a person, 100% all my turnover is transparent. Each penny I can explain from where I am getting, from where I am earning. But however, if tomorrow I make a statement which the dislike, which current government will not like, and I do not have enough confidence that there is another institution that can protect my right. As Asbed said, it's independent courts, it's a fair treatment or from a side of the prosecution, etc. Some kind of rules, how they can come to me, because for instance, in Germany or in France, I'm pretty sure in France, there are some written procedures before calling anybody to give such kind of information for where he or she earned that money. There are written rules, and these are system. These are well-developed institution. In Armenia, it's missing. In Armenia, there is no procedure. You can just simply enter to my account, see that there are some kind of big transaction, and so I get an order from some public official. Let me call Vardan Aramyan because he made some public speeches. Let him just make him life harder, and then what will be rational behavior for me? I'm going to open a bank account. It's just a nearby, only 4 hours drive from here in Georgia. Georgia is going to benefit from this. And all my transaction, actual transaction, I'm going to do with the Bank of Georgia instead of Arad Bank or Commerce Bank or Armenia Bank. That's it. End of the story.
What's interesting to me was when they were having hearings in the Armenian parliament, the head of the State Revenue Committee, Rustam Badasyan, basically said this is a very sensitive topic and we have to have the opinion of the central bank before we move ahead with it. But then they published this proposal on e-drafts, And they asked the central bank, what do you think about this? And central bank said that, we haven't reviewed this proposal yet. So my question is, I haven't followed this. I think this was 2-3 weeks ago. I haven't followed this closely. Have you? And what is the current status of this proposal?
Oh, that's a very fair question, very good question. My anticipation is that in any case, international financial organizations like IMF or World Bank, they are going to have a concern on this issue. Central bank also the key stakeholder, which is going to raise a red flag on this issue. But in any case, judging what is going on in Armenia, I'm not a skeptic, and I'm not a person who is making a panic in advance. But I'm realistic. I think there is a big chance that in the end of the day, government is going to pass that law. I have such kind of anticipation.
Interesting.
Because this is another tool for punishing those persons who will confront with the government. And why am I making this judgment? Again, you can just look to the media. Recently, there was a court case about the arrest of Hovik Manucharyan. And when prosecutor asks for another form of the limitation or managing the risk, and then court, no matter what each party are talking, he make a judgment that he has to put into the jail again for 3 months without any statement, without any explanation.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, the prosecution was okay with bail, but the judge, I guess, overruled the prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely. And after having looked to that, after what will be the rational behavior of the knowledgeable person? That's
right.
My realistic anticipation. If this is the case in Armenia, there is no guarantee that tomorrow they are going to pass it. No matter what is going to show IMF or World Bank or a central bank, they're going to do that. I love to see that this law is not good. To all my respect, by the way, I have a high respect to the employees of the SRC. I have a lot of colleagues working in SRC, and by the way, very honest and very professional working in SRC, which I respect them, and I had the fortune to work with them. Whatever I am talking with, it is have nothing to do with their professionalism, nothing to do with the SRC. I'm talking about the overall environment, systems, and the risk.
Okay, let's begin on our next topic. Maybe it has been there all the time, but I noticed that there seems to be an increase in rates that banks are charging for converting and cashing out foreign currency. For example, let me give you an example that I noticed myself. If I'm an Armenian business owner that focuses mainly on exporting, then this means that my business income is in foreign currency. In my case, for instance, US dollars, while most of my expenses are in AMD. So if I receive $10,000, then in order to use that to pay salaries, I need to convert it to AMD. My bank will happily convert it to drum at a very high commission, or essentially at a very low exchange rate, which negatively impacts me. For instance, recently my bank offered to do this for me at 409 AMD for $1. While if I had the dollar in cash, I could go to an exchange point outside and sell it at 423. So essentially, the bank would make a profit that is approximately 3% higher than what the cash exchange point would do. I told my bank, no, you know what? Just give me the $10,000 in cash, and I'll go do it myself at the exchange point. They said, fine, but we'll charge you a 3% cashing out fee. And basically, essentially, they're making it unprofitable for me to even take that money out and go do the exchange myself.
They're just going to cut out 3% to give you your money?
Yeah, they said if you want dollars, we'll take out 3% and give you the dollars. To me, this amounts to a huge penalty for export-based businesses that I don't remember being there in the past. And maybe I'm wrong, so feel free to correct me. And this also means that Armenian banks are eating up essentially 3% of all remittances sent to Armenia, because if it's not your salary, then and these are the most neediest people. So they would need to cash to convert that dollar in order to use it. So what is driving the Armenian banks to have such a huge charge on conversion rates? Is it a central bank requirement, or is it more like the banks can happily collude? There's not too much competition. What is driving this high charge, in your opinion?
It's driving the problem that bankers are facing with a problem to effectively import cash of the foreign forex, euro, dollar from Euro-Atlantic banks. I will explain what is the situation. Look, first of all, we need to distinguish two financial markets or forex markets: cash and non-cash. Just going to the beginning from the problem, from where it comes. The problem is come from a confrontation of Russia and Euro-Atlantic bloc. Do you know that Russia have been switched off from a dollar market and euro market?
Right.
But this is about the non-cash market. There is also a cash market, right? So there is a risk that those territories like Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, they will somehow have a linkage with Russia. No matter that they were switched off from a non-cash market, because electronically it's very hard to trade or send from Russian banks, or Russians cannot send a dollar or euros. But in cash, they can put everything in their pocket and bring and can do some kind of scheme transaction in Armenia or in Kyrgyzstan or in Kazakhstan, convert it for the Armenian dram into the dollar or vice versa, and then.
I just want to ask a quick question. So are you referring this to be maybe a liquidity problem that's created by
Absolutely.
the Russian exclusion from the SWIFT system?
Not only that, once again, Asbed, one thing is the non-cash market. It's a SWIFT. What is a SWIFT? SWIFT is a
bank exchange
electronic information transfer system that goes together with your money. Right? It also, when you send the money, then information also goes with your money, explaining to whom it belongs, who is the final staker. By the way, switch it off from a SWIFT system. It doesn't mean that you cannot do a transfer. The SWIFT system have been invented in 1974 by 4 big conglomerates. And it is a system of fast transfer of information,
right?
Financial information. Before that, there was a banking transfer, and this transfer was goes with a FedEx or some kind of for the phone or for the other means of the communication. Now, coming back to this, when it's not only switching off from a SWIFT. Many assets, many accounts, dollar accounts of Russian banks have been frozen. For euro accounts and dollar accounts.
Okay.
So if you make a transfer for the euro, it goes for the ECB and then goes to the final beneficiary. Similarly, so for the dollar, if you send money, for example, to the Luxembourg, it goes first of all to the Federal Reserve and then goes back to this information. And then goes back to the final beneficiary. That's why when they switched off from dollar market and euro market, it only refers to the non-cash market. How about the cash market? Because there's also cash in Russia, which can flow to the Russian ruble, can flow to the Armenia, can convert it into the dollar, and then can be cashed out and go back to Russia. Different schemes. Either non-cash transfer Russian ruble, convert it into the dollar in your account, and then cash out and going back to the Russia in cash, US dollar.
I understand.
Similar scheme. That's why Euro-Atlantic bloc banks, Raiffeisen, UBS, whatever they are going through, now they are very cautious to give a cash to the Armenian banks. Even many banks that are faced with a hard, they cannot import cash because they also follow if cash amount flowing to Armenia is increasing. For instance, in the year 2021, Armenian banks demand 300 million. Now they demand 500 million. So how come that they demand 500 million? That's why Euro-Atlantic bloc very much reluctant to give a cash because cash they cannot control. Non-cash transactions they can control. And they switched off already Russia. Cash transactions they cannot control. That's why it's a cost, Hovik, indirect cost that we are bearing. If banks, Armenian banks, here I need to advocate Armenian banks, no matter that they disclose huge profit for the first half of the year. However, it's not a fault of the Armenian banks, believe me.
Right.
They have to.
Well,
otherwise, if they do not impose the 3%, by the way, you can just do a simple calculation.
It's not their fault, but they will be laughing all the way to the bank.
But you can do a simple calculation, really. You can just take just exchange rate, non-cash exchange rate, add 3%, and you get that exchange rate of a cash. That's why 3% is also closing the gap between these two exchange rates.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's now go to, I think, one of your favorite topics, which is limitations on cash transactions. I know you're a big proponent of this, but on July 1, a new law came into effect that will limit cash transactions for most citizens and businesses to AMD 300,000, or basically around $730. To me, that seems to be very restrictive. In the US, for instance, there are no limits on the transaction, but a requirement to report transactions of over over 10,000 US dollars.
For money laundering purpose, absolutely.
Yeah. So some EU countries have limits. I think that there are some even that are close to Armenia, but I don't know if there are any that are more restrictive than Armenia. But there are also countries like Austria, Cyprus, Estonia, which is like us, and Ireland that don't have any limits on cash transactions. The argument is that limiting cash transactions helps reduce money laundering, corruption, etc. But what are the downsides to such laws? Critics argue that this law will be a huge, coming back to the bankers who will be laughing all the way to the banks, this will be another huge boon to the banks because, it will introduce a huge influx of cash into the banking system and 3% transaction fees. So what is the effect on the banks if we introduce such a huge amount of cash into the banking system through this law?
Being very frank, again, banks are going to flourish, banks are going to benefit from all of this. It's obvious. There is no doubt about it. But Hovik, let's go part by part. First of all, about the idea. The idea of
yes.
Just trying to push your economy from cash into non-cash is very much welcome from my side. Because you can look to those economies where the cash in your money supply is very high, your fiscal discipline is very low. The risk of money laundering is very high because you cannot just simply control what is going on, how much time you can control that 1,000 dirham can pass from one hand to another hand. However, there's a second part of the story. The idea is very good. I don't think that anybody can convince me that idea is very bad because we need to do everything in order to push the transactions from cash to non-cash. I can bring you some kind of example. You can have you can see in Armenia a lot of trade centers like Petak, or there is agriculture sector, trading center.
Like wholesale trading centers.
Right? The wholesale sector that the owner asks cash payment without recording anybody. It's hard for a normal business. Let me bring you an example. The company which imports the banana, and he wants part of his banana to sell in this trading center, the wholesale center. he's forced, in order to sell in the trade center, he's forced to pay in cash to the owner of that center. You know how much on a monthly he is paying for the couple of trade spaces? You know, around 4 million drams each month. Each month, 4 million drams. Just calculate how much will be for and he's paying no taxes, zero tax. For the company, it's a very big headache because he didn't know, he doesn't know how to record this cash because this costs. Right. First. Second, he cannot compensate his payment for value-added tax because while he imports in the border, he pays value-added tax. Now he cannot net it out from his credit, right? This is the second point. Third, there is also risk that a tax inspector will come and say there is some kind of discrepancy you're booking on your books. The third, and then penalize you. And it happens. I'm talking about the real thing. In the end of the day, this person can collect this cash, go and purchase apartment, convert into the real wealth. In a construction, he can construct a new building, he can construct, and these are cash economy, the problematic. That's why the idea is very much welcome. However, there's a second part of the story. How you are going to do that. Whether you did your homework appropriately in order to harm your citizens. Have you calculated all the pros and cons? Do you have what just an alternative scenario? What if this is going to happen? Here we have a big problem. For instance, nobody can tell me from where this 300,000 comes from. Some people say that we did some kind of observations or monitoring of a cash transaction that goes from a cash machines. So what? It's not enough for me to come in. Second, the readiness of the bank, whether they are ready, and now we end up that only two banks, they just separate, they distinguish this market between two banks, and tomorrow we are going to have a big problem because these two banks are ready, they have a big chunk in the financial market, now they are going to become incumbents, they are going to dictate rule of the games in the financial markets. Is to all my respect to them.
Which two banks are they?
It's Armenia and Armenia. But whatever I'm telling it, my criticism has nothing to do with two banks. Because they're normal, they are profit-making. I respect these two banks. I am a client of these two banks, and you cannot criticize these two banks. The problem is for public officials and policymakers. Moreover, there's another bad story. Whenever you are going to link this cash machine, there are these hadama cash machines that are printing checks for a cash transaction. And there is an obligatory provisions in the legislation that this cash machine, now they must also serve as post terminals. Now they need to switch on to the post terminal. Do you know how many vendors do we have in our Armenia that are doing this transaction? I mean, switching this cash machine to the post terminals? Only one vendor, which do not have enough capacity. And it's going to become a monopolist. I'm not talking about the time, just going to this blindly. I cannot understand. Again, I'm an advocate of moving from a cash economy toward a non-cash economy. Because me personally, I am a transparent person. I don't have any problems to show all my transactions. Those persons who are generating 10 times, 40 times more revenue and paying zero tax to this, yes, they need to disclose the turnovers. But another story, how we are enforcing them.
I just want to clarify, my question began with the limit of $730 or $300K, but we then started talking about the two banks, and I just want to clarify for our listeners. So there are two banks, because the legislation also talks about how pensions need to be distributed cashlessly. So there are only two banks that have agreed to the government's, I guess, system of distributing cashless pensions. And is that correct? Am I understanding?
Yes, but the problem is that other banks refuse to do that. And why other banks refuse to do that? Because it's too costly for them. Because they do not have this kind of post terminals. Usually our service served by two banks, Armenia Bank and Asbed Bank. That's why they can, because of the scale effect, they can just hide this cost in overall their turnover. The problem is not in this bank. The problem is in the policymakers. That's why I tell you, before guys making any decision, you need to count also the consequences of your decision. Next is going to happen the following. Next, these two banks are going to become a dictator. They are going to dictate the rule of the game because they are going to become already they are big, and this is a problem.
So everyone essentially who is receiving pension, which is a huge amount, and will need to become a customer of one of these two banks.
For instance, one of the companies that have the cash machines that are printing these checks, they receive an email from SRC that, gentlemen, you need to switch your cash machine to the post terminals to be ready to execute that law. So, but that company was servicing by another bank. So he has to go and open an account mandatory in that banks in order to obey the rule. But it means that tomorrow he's going to withdraw all his accounts from another bank, like I don't know. And these banks are going to shrink. Those banks are going to expand their shares in the market.
So both, even large merchants, not just pensioners.
Currently, there are 50,000, taxpayers that are small. In the beginning, I spoke with different CEOs of the banks. They have their own excuse, which do not satisfy. For me, it is not satisfactory for me. They say that these 50,000 are not so big, but they have a big potential for growth. Today they are small, but tomorrow these are small middlemen. Who says that tomorrow they will not become a big companies? You see?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Aramyan. Really, this is a very interesting discussion. We actually postponed some topics to talk about next week, and we will split this podcast into several parts. But the last question for today. Some political and economic analysts claim that it is very odd that after a capitulating loss in the war in Artsakh, our currency is relatively stable and not in free fall as what would be expected from other post-war examples that we've seen in the past throughout history. Another attribute of what is called a paradox is that since 2020, there has been an unprecedented activity in the real estate market. This is even before the Russian-Ukrainian war. For instance, Arthur Hambartumian claims that in 2021, we had 200,000 transactions in the real estate market, out of which 55,000 were purchase-sale transactions. By contrast, in 2017, when our economy was doing much better, many would say, there were about 35,000 transactions overall. So, do you agree that there's a paradox here? And if not, how do you explain these surprising statistics to a layperson like me?
I will explain this with behavior and our cultural understanding of Armenians. Armenians, extraordinary nation. I will explain you why. Because when there is a tension and there is a problem, Armenians become more organized. Armenians become more consolidated.
And we become problem solvers.
It's amazing thing, Hovik, believe me. You cannot find any while when there is a normal situation, they have some chaotic behavior. Nobody understands what they want. To all my respect, but this is something amazing thing. Let me bring you some example. During the war, you know how much the deposit left Armenian banking system? In the very beginning, some couple of billions of dirhams, but then it returns back. All of a sudden, while compared to the other, immediately citizens they take their money and then they left the country. Also, after the this kind of romantic disastrous war, also there was a lot of people that left Armenia, but overall collective behavior of the Armenians, was very good. But I will explain the consequence. There are also some factors from together with this, it helped us. So the first factor, as I said, is our behavior in the first 3 months during the war. But after that, if external factors do not contribute to that situation, I am pretty sure that our dram was going to be depreciated. And that factor was remittances. And mostly it comes from US. How come that it comes from the US? Well, for 2 factors. The first, that Armenians also benefited from the very expansionary fiscal policy of the US government because they gave a lot of benefits. And many citizens, they benefited from this big money. And part of them, they will send to their relatives. The second, in 2006, I made a study, the structure of and the incentives of remitting money. And in some countries, these remittances are pro-cyclical. In our country, mostly it's a counter-cyclical. When there is a problem, mostly remittances go up. And when there is not a problem, then remittances retreat and go back. These are counter-cyclical effects. And after 2020, in the 2021, mostly it's this counter-cyclical effect of the remittances took place. And many our relatives send the money to Armenia, and mostly, as I said, it comes from US. These are key factors that have helped us to withstand these external factors and also consequences of the war. In 2022, already I said what are the factors behind our global development. But believe me, I'm not in a side that our economy began to expand because of the local factors, because our investors do not fear any risk, do not feel any risk, do not fear that something will happen. No, if you look to
we lucked out.
Yeah, if you look to the type of economic growth, we do not have a supply push economic growth where investment comes first, then productivity goes up, then tradable sector expands, etc. We have a demand side growth, which remittances firstly come in 2021. We benefited from the terms of trade positive effect when metal prices go up dramatically, and then a lot of
But so that explains to me, I think, remittances. But how about what I talked about in terms of real estate transactions? How do you explain such a huge bump in 2021 in real estate transactions?
Because Hovik, the real sector it belongs to the sector of a non-tradable sector. Hovik, it's a normal.
Okay.
Yeah, because
so people get more remittances and they buy.
It's a non-tradable sector, and when there is a money, this is the golden rule in economics. There is a money, there is a demand. Non-tradable sector began to expand. That's normal, and prices in a non-tradable sector goes up. So they react to the money. Money is coming. This non-tradable sector is expanding. Prices in the non-tradable sector goes up.
Interesting.
Mr. Aramyan, thank you very much. This was a very interesting discussion. You sort of promised that we will continue this discussion again, so so we will take you up on that offer, and we really appreciate on behalf of our listeners, thank you for all the time that you have given to us.
Thank you again, Mr. Aramyan.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
That concludes this Conversations on Grung episode, and we hope you found it useful. As always, we invite your feedback. You can find us on most social media and podcast platforms or our website, grung.org. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our pages, and follow us on social media. On behalf of everyone in this episode, we wish you a good week. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.